Luella Herrera Rey-Zapal left the state of Indiana after her ex-boyfriend was successfully captured by Interpol. A regional ICE task force arrested him on the rickety front steps of their mobile home. Anton Dobromovich, a tall, physically imposing man despite being 20 years her senior, who drove a venture logistics truck for the past 11 years, was not a Croatian refugee. The older man she had lived with, cooked for, taken beatings from, and slept beside for the past 1,000 nights, was a wanted Serbian criminal named Aleš Dalek. She packed her things, called the restaurant where she washed dishes, and drove south in a battered, dark blue Ford Bronco. There were no more Eastern European football matches on the television, no open-handed slaps in exchange for sarcasm, no more piss-poor Spanish, no black and mild cigars, no vodka, no Jägermeister, no more threats of battery acid. But she was not free. When you have anywhere to go, you have nowhere to go, her brother had said years ago in Ciudad Acuña. She could sustain herself for a little while on her savings and the thick wad of emergency cash she took from behind the medicine cabinet. She would need work. She could find that easy enough. She was good at getting jobs. Finding a place to stay wherever she ended up would be the real challenge. She had started in Chicago and a year later moved down to Indiana. She had chosen Chicago for the established Mexican presence, and the New York City seemed overwhelming. She didn't mind the cold either. She wanted those snowy Christmases from the television specials. It didn't take long to acclimate to the razor-like wind on her cheeks, but her time there was brief. She left for what she perceived to be the fields of the country in the next state over after her apartment building was condemned, and the owner of the bodega, where she stocked shelves, was burned to death in a back-alley dumpster. She moved on to work in the soy fields, apple orchards, and a few tree farms, then a temporary warehouse position. She became familiar with the truck drivers and eventually met Anton. He was older, but she was attracted to his work ethic and his guidance. They were both immigrants. He looked at her as just one person, one woman who chose to leave home, where other white men saw her as a symptom of a socio-political dilemma. She thought of the kids held in detention camps in the Southwest and the raids in Mississippi, then thought of the full-color images she had once seen of starving Bosnian men in concentration camps. Anton had a golden scorpion tattooed on his shoulder, framed by a red, white, and blue military patch. He said it referenced a German rock band from the 80s, that he had done it as a kid after a concert. Luella stopped for coffee once she made it to Kentucky. There was an angular building just off the exit with a large stucco coffee pot sculpture in the gravel driveway. She got out and stretched her legs. The weedy lawn before the steps of the coffee house was littered with folk art silhouettes and whirligigs. She went inside and struggled to close the door in the wind. There was no one at the register near the chalkboard menus, and only one customer sitting in the very back in the dark. Luella stood in silence, pretending to study the menu, when the girl in the back yelled out to her in Spanish, "Are you looking for work? Because there's no work here." The girl had a Mexican accent. "I just want coffee." "Sure you do," she said, then yelled to the back for someone to help her. A white guy emerged from the kitchen and began to shake his head. "We don't need nobody right now," he said in English. "I just want coffee," she said. "You don't have to buy something just because you came in. It don't make no difference." She turned around and walked back into the wind. "Don't come back," she heard the man say through the door. She drove another 8 miles and stopped at a McDonald's. The light was warm inside, the interior newly renovated. She took a seat next to the bathroom and drank her coffee. There were 2 kids running through the indoor playset on the opposite end of the glass. They were without any visible chaperone. She watched them play as she finished her coffee, inventing a bleak narrative for them. There had been an old barn house in the field across from the gas station, beside the McDonald's. She imagined they lived there, and their father and mother and this McDonald's indoor play place was the only playground in the area, and it was safer than playing in the barn with the animals and equipment. Or they had been abandoned by a younger mother who would no longer take care of them, and hoped this state's welfare system was their best chance at life. She looked at every face in the McDonald's to see who might resemble the little boy or girl. She turned toward the parking lot where she saw a tall man looking through the window of the Bronco at her belongings. He wore multiple layers of shirts to fight the cold above his scuffed jeans. She ran outside when he began jimmying the handle of the Bronco with a metal shim. "Hey you, get the fuck away from my truck." It still didn't feel like it was hers. The kid glanced at her with bloodshot eyes. "This is your truck?" "Yeah, it's mine," she said. "Get out of here or I'll call the police." "All right," he said, putting the shim in his pocket, backing away from her. She took out her keys and unlocked the door. As she climbed into the front seat, the kid ran behind her and smashed her face into the steering wheel. He was incredibly weak. She instinctively kicked him in the groin, and then turned around and pushed him to the asphalt where she stomped his face. His nose cracked and blood drained down his lips. An old man in a windbreaker ran into the parking lot. "I saw the whole thing, asshole. You just assaulted this woman." He had his phone in his hand. Luella made eye contact with the old man. "I need to leave," she said. "Are you okay, ma'am?" "I'm fine. He didn't hurt me." "He tried to." The kid got up and ran. "Where are you going, asshole? The police are coming." "Oh, God damn it." He punched in 911 on his phone. Luella got back into the truck and pulled out of the parking lot. "Why are you leaving? Don't you want to press charges?" She didn't say anything as she drove away. She drove further south through Kentucky, admiring the green pastures and muscle-bound thoroughbreds galloping along the white fences. In the night, she crossed into the mountains of East Tennessee. She took the first exit she saw and checked into a cheap room. The motel was built next to an old mining quarry. The view from her window was blocked off by a wall of solid rock. She checked out in the morning. It was the first time in several days she had seen any sunshine. The lack of cloud cover left the terrain vulnerable and frigid winter. She could see her breath as she crossed the parking lot. A couple argued in the middle of the street. They both looked feral to her. Luella had learned to drive on long, straight roads and flat expanses of desert, and later on, thin stretches of gray road bisecting the cornfields. She wasn't used to the winding mountain highway and found herself driving white-knuckled nonstop through the state of Tennessee, only to catch her breath once she arrived in North Carolina. Her tires were white from the leftover salt and grit. She bought a map of the state in the evening and spread it across the dashboard. Instead of continuing south, she would head east. She wanted to see the coast. The mountains disappeared behind her as rolling foothills gave way to terrain so flat it looked nearly level. She passed RV dealerships and squat ranch homes, built into the shadows of the low-hanging billboards on the side of the endless highway. For the first time since leaving Indiana, the radio started picking up Spanish-language stations. It was all reggaeton or mariachi. Perhaps if she searched hard enough, she might find some narco corrido, which she had abhorred, but nothing as quaint as a ranchera or South American nueva canción. She followed the signs for a coastal town called Beaufort. Tourist destinations had the most fly-by-night jobs to go around. As the night approached, an influx of warm air spread across the region. Lightning struck in the distance where the faded sky turned black. It was time to find another place to sleep. Her options were sparse. She began to suspect there was nothing between here and the coast. A light in the distance, just beyond the next roadside, caught her eye. A young man sat on top of a camping bag, with a Coleman lantern by his feet in the sparse weeds. He wore a straw hat and suspenders with his beaten-up clothing. Beside his camping bag sat a sinister-looking black case with bronze buckles and a firm handle. She imagined he could fit a rifle inside. He had a cardboard sign on his lap, Oak Island bound, show to play, folk singer, 2 to 3 miles helps. Luella killed the radio and slowed the car. The young man smiled. She stopped, checked the rearview mirror, and idled the Bronco. You headed to the coast, ma'am? I am. Oak Island by any chance? I'm a musician. I have a show to play there in a few days. I don't know Oak Island. I'm going to Beaufort. She realized she didn't know how to pronounce the name of the town. Oh, I see, he said. Well, that's a totally different way. See, I'm headed south past Wilmington, and you're going way up there past Jacksonville. I don't want to put you out of your way. He tipped his beaten straw hat to her. She found a bizarre, arcane gesture slightly disarming. I don't really have a plan. I chose Beaufort on the map. I'm looking for work. Does Oak Island have tourists? I suppose it does. People only live there part of the year, but the summers are always packed. She hesitated. Well, I guess I can take you. His face lit up. All right. He went back to the road for his things, turned off the lantern, and grabbed the black case. She stopped him in his tracks. I need to know what's inside that, she said. He lifted up the case. This right here? It's my banjo. Show it to me. He set everything else down and opened up the case. The instrument was worn around the head, with flecks of drum skin eaten away from years of playing, but the fretboard was clean, with an elaborate pattern of mother of pearl etched into the reddish wood. He had the case open toward her, for her to see there was nothing else hidden inside, and began to play a classical roll to show off his skill. Okay, she said. Put your stuff in the back. He loaded up his things in the back seat and sat beside her and resumed her journey. The weather finally hit them, and she had the windshield wipers on full capacity. Good thing you came along when you did, he said. I guess you were lucky. I suppose I was, he said. My name's Ford Nix. Luella, she said. Mucho gusto, Luella. You speak Spanish? Nope, just what I forgot from school. Wish I did. My English could be better, she said. Your English sounds fine to me. When they passed the storm, the earth around them was pitch black. She was tired and her eyes began to drift. Ford grabbed the wheel and straightened the Bronco as she came to. Whoa now, he said. You getting tired? I guess I am. You guess, no offense, but I'd like to live to play my show. How far you come today? I drove in from Tennessee. Oh my God. Do you want me to drive? No, she said. There's a Coke in the side thing there. He handed her the warm Coca-Cola. She took a sip. You know what you could do, she said. Yeah? You could play me some songs. Play your way to the island. He reached into the back seat and took out his banjo. Well, this is an old school song I learned when I played out in Texas, he said. I think it originally had some Spanish title, but the white folks on the plains gave it a new name and some English lyrics to go along. They call it Mexican Pastel. He proceeded to play a type of corrido, along with the twangy mountain wail. His voice filled the cabin of the Bronco and kept her awake. He played all night until they reached Wilmington and slept in a parking lot beside the beach.